All right, back here on Inside Wrestling Radio, and today on the telephone we have a true legend of the wrestling business. From Puerto Rico to the WWF to TNA to WCW to Japan and just about everywhere in between, Dutch Mantell has made history and created moments that you've never forgotten. He's written 2 books so far, the first of which, The World According to Dutch, which came out in December '09, as well as last year's Tales from a Dirt Road. His website, www.dutchmantell.com, has tons of road stories and books, information, and all kinds of great stuff. Welcome to the program, the legendary Dirty Dutch Mantell. Dutch, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. And listen, I really greatly appreciate you coming on the show with us today. It's a huge honor for us to have you, man. It really is. And for the people who don't know, Dutch, you've done booking for just about every company on the face of the earth. How did that come about, man? How did you get into such that entrenched in the business?
Well, I started out like in the 70s. I've been around a long time. And if you really want to know what wrestling is, it's really an art form is what it is. Not only a physical form, but an art form. Wrestling done right is beautiful.
Absolutely.
Wrestling done bad, I don't think there's anything worse, to tell you the truth. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to wrestle forever because, you know, everybody, every entertainer, everybody, they have a shelf life. Yeah. And I had an aversion to actually working a real job.
Yeah.
So what I did, I looked around to where there was another level that I could go to, and maybe I could extend my my pro wrestling career, which is what I did. They don't use the term bookers anymore. They used to have bookers.
Yeah.
That was the guy who actually set the match. He was the matchmaker. He was everything. He kind of set the direction of the company that he was working for. Now they have writers. Bookers, if you use the term booker now, they look at you like you spit on the Pope or something. Well, we don't have bookers. We have creative talent. We have creative talent. And in my second book, Tales from a Dirt Road, I actually explained the difference between a booker and a writer. See, a booker is like a coach. A writer is just a writer, to tell you the truth.
Right.
And to make my analogy a little more understandable, you wouldn't take a writer and put him on the field with the New York Jets, the New York Giants. You would put a writer out there. You'd put a pro football player out there, ex-football player. And I've heard this before. I've heard people say that, well, you don't really have to play the game to really do it. Well, yeah, you do. You really do.
Sure.
Because you can't step out there a coach can't ask a player to do something he's never done. And you don't have bookers anymore, you have writers. Like I said before, but before they had great bookers. And I learned from some of the very best. I learned from a guy called Assassin Number 1. His name was Tom Ernesto, and he was a member of the Assassins tag team. I used to ride with him, and he used to teach. And and Jerry Jarrett was a good one. Bill Watts was a great one. Those guys were, even Dusty Rhodes, Jerry Lawler, great bookers. And that's how I learned. And one of the reasons see, some of your greatest bookers were never your greatest wrestlers. It's almost like baseball. Your greatest managers were never your greatest baseball players. Your greatest managers were actually the guys who played second string and stayed in the dugout most of the game. But in staying in the dugout, what they did, they watched the manager manage the game, and that's how they learned. So you have to learn it from somewhere. You can't learn wrestling from a writer. You just can't do it. So anyway, that kind of got me started down the booking road, and I've booked in Memphis, and I've booked in Florida, and I've booked several different places, and I've booked most of my booking success actually came in Puerto Rico. I've been down there several times, and I booked the territory, and to me, Puerto Rico was almost old school, and now old school to me is new school because it's so old it's new again.
It's come full circle just about. Dutch, let's back up just a little bit. You were talking about the difference between a booker and a writer. You know, and it seems like wrestling, especially from the WWE standpoint, they're moving away from wrestling. They've even taken it out of their name. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a corporate decision. I don't think it'll affect the product, and to me that's just the evolution of the wrestling profession, because what has happened, I think wrestling has always been a tough sell to advertising. It really has. But when you put entertainment in your name, that takes a little of the stigma off. And to me, I didn't expect they would ever take wrestling out. But since they did it, I'm really not that bothered by it, to tell you the truth. I'm a traditionalist, but not that much, because it's going to change anyway. And I think even when a fan comes to a wrestling match and he watches a great match, yeah, he knows it's wrestling. Everybody knows what they're going to. They know what they're watching, but it doesn't take any of the pleasure out of it just because they took wrestling out of it. To me, that doesn't bother me that much at all.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I can't understand the idea of wrestling being a dirty word when that's your bread and butter. I mean, that's what you've made your bones on, and taking it out of the equation. it's kind of just mind-boggling, to me at least.
I've seen a lot of things in wrestling that, to use the term mind-boggling, my mind's been boggled a lot of times. So maybe I'm just shell-shocked. I don't know. To me, it's a corporate decision, and
Sure.
they did it. And, I don't run the company. It's their decision, so whatever.
Gotcha.
I mean, they took in $500 million last year, so
Yeah, exactly.
I guess they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I always qualify everything I say about the WWE by saying, they're billionaires, and I'm sitting here talking to a microphone in South Carolina, so apparently somebody up there knows what they're doing. Dutch, let me ask you a little something. You've worked for pretty much every company out there, every major company. Yeah, you work for the WWF, of course, the manager of John Layfield. What's your current relationship with the WWE? Any shot of you ever going back up there and doing anything with them?
Well, possibly. The guy on Tough Enough right now, Jeremiah Riggs.
Yeah.
He came out of my wrestling school.
Oh, is that right? The University of Dutch.
University of Dutch is in Lebanon, Tennessee, and for anybody who wants to, that's another pet peeve of mine, is wrestling schools.
Yeah.
So I'll get on into that in a minute. Jeremiah went to the school. He didn't go long because he went. It was like maybe a month, and he was having some MMA matches coming up.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, let me go train these, and I'll be back." I said, "Okay." And then he started winning. He hit a string of like 5 straight wins. And every time you win, you go up a little more. So, and then by that time, he had gotten a hold of the Tough Enough people, and they accepted him.
Wow.
And now, to me, I'm going out on a limb here, but I'm going to predict that Jeremiah Riggs will win Tough Enough.
Wow, big prediction.
And he really didn't have that much experience. See, when Tough Enough started, they wanted guys with experience. That's what they wanted.
Uh-huh.
And I watched the show. Some of those girls they had on there, one girl's never even set foot into a wrestling ring. Miss USA, Rima, what's her name? And she was horrible. But I tell you what, she did have guts. She did try to do it. She did. I didn't think she'd do that. And then that girl, Michelle, or whatever her name was, Johnny Fairplay's wife, she's been wrestling 11 years. Please. She may have been watching wrestling for 11 years, but she hadn't been doing it. I mean, my first month students can do better than she did. Steve Austin, of course, is the host of it now,
Yeah.
and in my first book, I do a series of chapters. I call it University of Dutch Alumni.
Yeah.
And these are the guys that they didn't go to a school per se, but they actually traveled the road with me early in their careers. And to me, that's the way I learned the business. Is when I first started out, I would drive these older veterans, and I was the designated driver because they drink on the way back, and
Right.
I'd drive them back.
Yeah.
But on the way back, I would talk to them about my match.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would critique what I had done that night, what to do, what not to do this, do this, do this. I couldn't have got a better education in the pro wrestling business than that. So at night, about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, that's where actually my school started.
Listening to those guys critique your matches.
That's when it's almost like taking a test.
Yeah.
And then the professor sitting down with you after your test and telling you what you did right and what you got wrong. And I did the same thing with The Undertaker. I did the same thing with Kane, because I booked him in Puerto Rico. I was the first guy who ever booked him. And I did the same thing with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Now, you're also credited with giving Stone Cold his name. Tell us how that came about.
Well, it's in the book, first one, World According to Dutch. I was booked in Memphis, and I'll tell a long story short, he showed up, and I asked him what his name was. He said, "Well, my name's Steve Williams." I said, "Well, you can't use Steve Williams yet." He said, "Why not? That's my dang name." See, I remember, Ricky, that we're live here, so
Yeah.
I didn't use the other D.
I appreciate it.
I'm just a little bit ahead of the curve, But he said, I don't know why it's my name. I said, "Well, you can't because you already got Steve Williams, Dr. Death Steve Williams."
Yeah.
It's like having 2 Willie Nelsons or 2 Elvis Presleys. You can't have the same name.
Yeah.
And he couldn't think of a name. And finally, I do what all good bookers do when their talent gets stuck. I said, "Okay, tonight your name is Steve Austin." He said, "Like the $6 million man?" I said, "No, kid, in your case, more like the $6 man." So I put him out there in the match, and he wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
He was very green. He wasn't that good. He wasn't that bad. But when he come back, he said, what did you like about my match?" And I said, it'd be shorter to tell you what I liked, which was nothing. He said, "What's the matter with it?" I said, "Everything."
Yeah, you name it. Yeah.
And this is the way I got out of it. I said, "You see that chair? There was a folding metal chair leaning up beside the wall." I said, "You see that chair there?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Take that chair and go out there and put it down, set it down beside the door and sit in that chair. I want you to watch every match, every night, the entire time you're here." I walked out there 2 hours later, and guess who was sitting in the chair? Steve Austin was sitting in the chair, and I couldn't believe it. A wrestler actually doing what you tell him to do. I couldn't believe it. But he did that, and when I was in the WWF with him, guess what he did? He would take a chair every night and go sit and watch every match.
Wow.
And the reason that Steve Austin, and I say this in the book, the reason Steve Austin became the success that he did is because he totally immersed himself in the business and became a serious student of the game.
And which is what anybody has any aspirations should absolutely do. Dutch, we're up on a break right now. When we get back from the break, I want to move into your TNA time when you brought in Awesome Kong and put together that whole Divas division, which a lot of people may not be aware of. I want to talk a lot about that, and also we'll talk about your books and your website again. Dutch Mantell right here on Inside Wrestling Radio. We'll be right back with more coming up next.